Hi there, welcome to the Presgrove Case, focusing in on CCTV surveillance and the opportunities of that, what it could have held as for evidence and what people believe it to be in regard to the situation. Despite what's been said by partygoers or homeowners or friends of homeowners by saying cameras didn't work, other people are still wondering what are the possibilities, the what-ifs. In fact, there might have been footage. There could have been a camera that was working, but the footage was wiped, cleared, or where could it have been stored to? Did it disappear? Was it removed? Was it handled appropriately? Questions like that. And Michael Fazekas has done a previous post about it, and I wanted to catch up. I was going to do it earlier, but then other new things happened. So I just wanted to catch up. This video could be, well, not this video, but the post by Michael could have been influenced by another post, which I did cover in a video, where people were clearing it up about what was actually caught on camera versus what's meant by camera, as in CCTV surveillance security cameras or a mobile phone camera or video camera, a handheld portable one. And today I want to look at the comment section of what people had to say in response, and also want to show with you the party house property in daylight for most part of it, just to look for any potential cameras to understand the locations and the spots of them. Now, of course, if there's anyone that knows more or knows where the cameras were, whether they were working or not, you can, I don't know, direct it down below in the comment section, and anyone else can as well. If you're watching present during the live premiere, welcome. You can share your reactions in the live chat on the right side of the screen. And for anyone else and those on catch up, you let me know your questions, answers, thoughts, theories, and to do with today's video, the theme is surveillance. How big of a deal do you think it is? Do you think there's any possibilities around it and how it was handled, and any mysteries about it, and any other possible cameras elsewhere? You leave a comment below under the video that will help with spreading awareness and to try and keep the case alive, considering the direction it's going in. There's probably a very high chance not many people will show up to this premiere or hear about it, the video, just the way the algorithm is nowadays. And on top, it might just be the interest, but I'll do a separate video just to show you that at times it's not always silent, because TikTok has kind of worked at times when it was needed, not expected, but when it was needed for certain material. So we're here as we are with some video ideas to do, and I've still got a couple to tick off the list and then see where things go from there. If you are interested in additional coverage and previous videos you've missed out on, you'll be able to find the full playlist, top right corner where the eye symbol is up there. And there will be a PayPal link and channel membership link below in the pinned comment section by me. The order of how we'll do it today: first, acknowledge Michael Fazekas' original Facebook post, analyze, break it down, react, check the comments by people in response, and then add on to the photos and imagery. I think it's safe to say that there can be misunderstandings within the case, down to how other people communicate and how they describe things within the case, the events, the party, the people within, from an outsider perspective or an insider perspective, certain interpretations and descriptions. Not everybody is always on the same wavelength, and that's what leads to the misunderstandings. And it's not just a small, simple one. It tends to be on a bigger scale. And it's not just with one person, it can be with many, and it can also spread. And then it's trying to clear it all up, as in the possibilities. That's why if it was at the very start of the case and I was present, I'd be looking at the language and wording just to make sure what's said is clear and what people are actually talking about, they actually mean, and they don't actually mean something else, but how they word it, it's the opposite, because I've dealt with too much shit with time when people try and describe themselves, describe stuff or what's going on, and a hard time people just can't be arsed. And yet I'm the one that tends to put the fucking effort in to try and explain it. And what do other people do? They don't bother. And what do humans say? Oh, I didn't think. Oh, I wasn't sure. Oh, I didn't think about it. If you didn't think about it, then why are you in this situation? What situation? any situation, right? If you're present, if you're somewhat around, I mean, what's the deal? What's going on? If you're present with a group, if you're talking with other beings, and what next? What now? What's happening? And because people don't always think, it makes you wonder and question, do they really know what they want? Do they really know what their aim is? And what are they doing? Because it's nice to know instead of being led on. Because I think just like with true crime cases and communities, people can be led on. It does no good whatsoever. And it can ultimately lead to a misunderstanding. Be clear, be straight to the point, and get it out the way as soon as possible. What's the deal? What's going on? What's happening? What had happened? Etc. I don't see enough of that. And I've been on the receiving end of a lot myself, so I do know a thing or two. And that is why I do what I do in my style, my format, my language, my wording, YouTube, on the platform, off the platform, and so much more beyond. I do what I do because I've been on the receiving end of so much with time. I will not become the cancer which I've seen within the human race with time. That's what separates me from most people out there. And with that being said, I think we should focus in on what Michael has been saying. The 14th of September, the Presgrove Project, admin Michael Fazekas. The title of the post, "Where is the camera footage? Cloud storage," raises big questions. I'm assuming that this isn't directly linked to the whole laptop claim, as we've previously seen. This must be just to do with the house. Michael says, "We've been told the cameras at the party house weren't working the night Noah died, but then people connected to that house admitted they had footage of other incidents that night, maybe such as the side-by-side rollover, rolling it back over on its wheels, Caden being caught on camera. You've heard those references, right? If cameras caught those, they could have caught everything. So where's the missing footage of Noah leaving unharmed? Where's the footage of the so-called UTV crash, also known as the side-by-side rollover? Here's what people need to know. Most modern cameras don't just store video on a box in the house. They upload it to cloud servers. Companies like Ring, I guess Ring a Doorbell, Nest, and Arlo all do this. And guess what? That footage doesn't just vanish into thin air. Retention periods vary, but usually run 30 to 60 days by default. After that, it's deleted unless preserved. Law enforcement can get this data with a warrant, subpoena, or court order. Moving on, further down on the post, some companies like Ring, Amazon, can even hand over footage to police without a warrant in emergencies. Others, Google, Nest, Arlo, reserved the same right in their user agreements. So here's the question. Did law enforcement ever request or execute warrants for the party house camera data? If they did, what was returned? Deleted files? Empty logs? If they didn't, why not? When it could have been the clearest evidence of what really happened to Noah. The truth is, if the cameras worked before and after, then footage existed, and if it passed through cloud servers, there should be logs of access, downloads, or deletions. That data trail doesn't just disappear. This isn't just a red flag, it's a flashing siren, and until someone explains exactly what was done to obtain that cloud footage, the story of cameras not working is nothing but an excuse. Taking a look at the responses, an individual known as Shelley said to Michael, "They should already have gotten this. Noah lost his life. You think we would already know this? If it was my son, I promise my attorney would be all over this. It blows my mind that these people think we are all crazy, but who in the hell are they? Praying for justice. You're spot on, my friend." Is there a high-powered attorney involved in the discovery from Highway Patrol? Have they gotten anything? Cindy, Isn't that amazing? The camera had been working, then all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, it quits. BS. Where is the footage? But that's the thing. In terms of that side-by-side rollover and events like that, as what supposedly happened on the Monday, in terms of when cameras were working or weren't, it seems to be that from the last video that we covered on my channel, Stevie Howard once said in the past that they weren't working whatsoever. But there was an exception of a comment I saw another time where it was a spelling typo, a mistake when typing it up by Stevie, because sometimes the spelling isn't always there and the sentence structuring isn't either, and it was worded as that they were, or a camera was working at a certain time. But all other times and before that, the cameras were not working, and that the party girls, the ones that were living there at the time, couldn't be bothered to fix it or get them replaced. But they were changed when it came to post-death of Noah Presgrove, supposedly. And we'll get into a bit more of that later. Anita, it shows how badly the cops are doing their jobs. Not acceptable. They should not be in law enforcement. I'm starting to think some of them are friends with the plaintiffs. Now, that theory has already been put across by people in the past on the Army page, for example. So it's nothing new, that. And Anita believes with their unprofessional investigative skills and within this unsolved case, they just ignore the demand across the world for justice. We want answers, dear police. The silence on this matter is very odd. There's so many information given on Facebook, yet nothing is getting investigated. Please tell me why. And then we've got Becca Ann, key individual. Shout out to Becca. How do we know there is actual footage? I mean, there's so much inconsistency with what was on that laptop. Has anybody seen any of the footage at all? Right. So the laptop does get brought into it, besides just the cameras on site of the property. There's a handful of responses which we will acknowledge. Michael says, go on one of my previous posts talking about the cameras and see the screenshot where Stevie Howard mentions that the security cameras at the property caught the Texas boys leaving, so they know what time they left. Go on one of my previous posts talking about cameras. Interesting. And that there is a screenshot. Well, with that being in mind, I will have a look for that. I might even get a screenshot now. Because if there is supposedly a screenshot which does show what Stevie said, which is similar to what I've been saying over and over again, but I could never get the screenshot, it speaks volume. But I'm sure I said to Michael or some people that, does it exist? Is it still out there? And maybe at one point they said, can't find it. So unless something has changed in between, if there is proof or evidence of that particular screenshot, whether it was a typo or it was meant as the truth, a slip of the tongue, it needs to be analysed immediately and documented. So, Michael Fazekas, what you say here is what I've been saying myself. And if you have the screenshot, the true, raw, natural screenshot, feel free to reach out to me one way or another, and I can do a video on that. Besides, Becca, oh, I know what Stevie said. I'm just curious if anybody has ever laid eyes on any of those pictures. I know what was stated, and I know about the claims. I'm just curious if anybody actually saw them with their own eyes. Michael, if someone made allegations of murder on your property, would you look at every camera angle of every second recorded there? I'm sure several must have. You'd assume OHP would, but have they? No clue. I've heard unconfirmed information about cloud storage warrants, but nothing official. Has there been any update, Michael Fazekas, on that group chat that you were in, or a group chat in which people passed on information to you in regards to that very blurry, unrecognisable image of supposedly Noah flat out in the bathtub or the shower? Any updates on that? Jessica, and who are the freaking Texas boys? Well, one of which would be Pepe Guam. That's one named individual. The others, the names have floated about here and there, but not often, and I can't remember myself. But I think to an extent, Donna Bond had a list of party-goer names, and some of which were Texas boys. Becca, of course I would, Michael. The issue that I have is there's been so much BS about the laptop and none of it is true. I'm honestly just trying to see if there is literally anybody that has laid eyes on any of the potential pictures from the potential cameras. Even where they actually turned the laptop in was lied about, and even who was there when the laptop was turned in was also lied about. I mean, I'd be thrilled if there was footage. I, for a long time, was convinced that the footage existed, but then that certain person was caught lying so many times it's hard for me to trust anything she says. Who is she? Are you referring to Stevie Howard or another woman? Michael's response, $1,000 question, I'd say million if I thought they were involved. Melanie, what was lied about? I've never heard this before. And who is they? Good questions. Becca says, all in regard to the laptop, who they met to turn over the laptop, what they claim to see regarding the laptop, who met them to pick up the laptop. I could literally go on for the next hour. This is the supposed laptop that was in the hands of Stevie Howard and boyfriend then at the time, I believe, known as Landon, which was then sold or moved on to a stranger who got a hold of it. Then that stranger decided to sell it on to somebody else. It got handed around a lot, or that's what the claims were. Michael, all information I've received up to this point has been accurate. I have no reason to doubt. Some things people cannot talk about publicly, possibly bad information has been given to certain people intentionally. Well, Justin Roy has made that reference where things such as the claim of Jack begging and desperate to get Noah back to the party. Justin said, I got incorrect information about that, wrong information. I'm not sure, but my experience has been pretty positive and honest. So, Michael Fazekas, in terms of all the information you have received and what you've been able to talk about public or pass about, what has been accurate and what has come to light backed up by it? Just a question on the spot. The acting sheriff at the time confirmed with me personally that he received the laptop and turned it into Oklahoma Highway Patrol. If it's in the right hands, that's a positive, but whether anything of importance was on it, that's a different question. If anything of importance was on it, would you have expected a change, a faster pace of movement by now in the case? Becca, I know it was turned in. Melanie asked what she lied about, as in she, not Melanie, but Stevie? She lied about who was with her when she turned it in. She lied about what location she was at when she turned it in. She lied about what law enforcement was there when she turned it in. I can go on. But who is she? Stevie Howard? That's what I'm interpreting. I also think we aren't going to see all the evidence. Maybe when this is all over, it will be made public, but a lot of it should be sealed forever, in my opinion. But yeah, I know we all want to see things, but it's not realistic in an ongoing investigation and calling people liars. See, that's the thing. Sensitive material, photos and media may not be shareable publicly. If by any chance it was, it might have crushed a lot of rumours. It might have made the environment online a little bit more healthier if there was more solid facts and more communication in that sense. But each case can be different. Some release more than others. It's been quite tight-lipped, this particular case. So for all the research that has been done by different people and viewers and so on, done a good job there. A range of people have done a good job. Just members of the general public, etc., because the victim's family doesn't say too much publicly, which is understandable. And the police certainly don't either publicly. So really, you can have stabbing blind in the dark. So if anything does come out and it's of value or worth, then it can go a long way. It would be nice if there was more of it. Donna, a different Donna. L.E. didn't want the footage because they're helping cover up for Noah's murder. That is quite a bold claim or statement to say. Might be a better idea to say, in my opinion, or what you think. Only because it could backfire on yourself, and when other people see a comment like this, it sounds quite confident, and is it truly backed up with hard evidence? I've not seen that yet. A person called Terry, exactly. Awfully convenient that cameras weren't working during important timeframes and events. We believe that. But realistically, it isn't always this way in every case when they want to hide the truth. You can interpret it like that, of course, but you can also interpret it as unlucky in life in other regards, maybe not true crime, where the one time you decide to go out for a walk or go out somewhere, an event, a meteorite, shocking weather disaster, amazing thunder and lightning occurs in front of you, and the best moments experience are the moments which aren't recorded but only seen through your eyes and brain and heart. And sometimes it should be that way. Or if you're out somewhere with someone, put the phones aside, leave them back. You just focus on what's ahead, what you're looking at, who you're with, and so on. But it's that ironic thing. You get a UFO, an alien, something mysterious, shocking, and you want people to believe you. You got no footage, no surveillance. You didn't record it because you didn't have your phone with you on that one occasion. And yet all the times, 360 days out of the year, you had your phone with you, went out and about. And that one day you didn't. Something happened and it wasn't recorded. It can happen with cameras working, recording and not. When it's needed most, it doesn't always happen. When it's not needed is when it can happen. Was it the case here, though? Well, from what Stevie Howard had said at one point in the past, that the cameras weren't working whatsoever, not at any point. But, of course, I say that somewhat lightly with what I remember seeing elsewhere, right? Crystal. I almost want to say because of underage drinking, they most likely turned those cameras off whilst the party was going. I could be wrong. I mean, it's a fair way of looking at it, of course, but it would be pointless to turn off the CCTV footage when they are using their mobile phones to record themselves and upload to Snapchat, where they're visibly seen drinking or there's, alcohol in the background. It kind of cancels it out. If you're going to turn the CCTV footage off because you're underage drinking, then you shouldn't be recording anything on your phones nor uploading it online, right? Melanie, turning off the cameras ahead of time would seem like it was premeditated to me. Fair enough. I'd check if they ever did that before at any other parties, my opinion only, not standing as fact and all as alleged. Good wording. Wish someone would answer this, and Shelley, amen. With the right attorney, I bet all this BS would be stopped. It's so ridiculous listening to it all. Think maybe Trump can help since they think they're untouchable. After looking at the comments there, part of Michael Fazekas' post is influenced by a big misunderstanding. Though granted, the supposed claim of Stevie Howard saying that the cameras were working when Texas Boys had left, shortly after Noah had already left. That's a valid point there. But if you put that aside, as if it never happened and it wasn't said, the claims by certain people left, right and centre, including Caden Pressey, who saw it himself, the after effects of the side-by-side rollover, whether it captured moments of it happening or just the after effect. And then from what BBC said and some other people about Caden Pressey caught on camera actually assisting in rolling it back over. Now, why would Caden be doing that when he's supposed to be recovering from his surgery on his left leg, knee, meniscus, ACL, I think it is, around that area? Whilst Caden was present at the party and engaged to some extent, limited with mobility, which is understandable, could also explain why he was dropped off back at the party with the girls when it came to after breakfast on Sunday. As the guys went back out, maybe Caden needed to rest, wanted to be careful with his leg, didn't want to strain himself too much or push his body too far. That recovery is important. Of course, not everybody takes that into consideration. Some people will push themselves too quick before recovering fully, and then they'll get injured, ill again. And then other people will just work and push too hard, and then wonder why are they in a never-ending cycle of getting injured or ill. The cycle needs to be broken, but in order to do that, the problem needs to be highlighted first. You push yourself too hard, there can be consequences. If you don't make changes, it'll keep happening. If you're in a situation where you've got no choice, well, then it's understandable. But therapy session aside, when it came to Caden Pressey at a party where you're supposed to have fun, and Caden did engage with activities, nevertheless, his leg recovering from it, he was still able to do things, but Caden never mentioned anything about helping or assisting rolling it over. But BBC says there is footage which proves that Caden was awake at that time and was present helping rolling it over, which is weird. How would Caden forget that? It depends how much truth there is to that. But let's just put that part aside and just focus only on the after effects of the side-by-side rollover. Mentions of that being caught on camera to some extent. Caught on camera, any form of surveillance, any form of camera, digital camera, a ballpoint CCTV camera, another type of CCTV camera, a trail camera, a mobile digital camera, a camcorder, a mobile phone camera, front-facing, rear-facing camera, right? Many different ways of recording. And at the time, things may have changed and understandings, but just to clear it up, at the time, I guess Michael interpreted the side-by-side rollover caught on camera as in by the property, the CCTV cameras, trail cameras around the property, on the building, round the back or the front, wherever. With Stevie Howard saying that they weren't working, they were old, knackered, but the girls didn't bother changing, replacing or fixing them at the time because they didn't feel the need to. That, yeah, if people are saying that they weren't working, that they're old, they need replacing, but nothing was done at the time, that's unfortunate. But if you hear in the same sentence or at a different point that cameras or a camera recorded or showed the side-by-side rollover, you'd think cameras as in surveillance, house cameras. That's not the case. And you could say, well, how do we know? Because if BBC has said that there is footage of Caden assisting in helping rolling it back over the right way, in what way? What type of media? What type of equipment was used to record it then? It wasn't quite clear, was it? Well, a form of clarity in response to Michael Fazekas would be what Caden Pressey had said in one of the interviews, whether that be Partners in True Crime or the police interview. Caden Pressey said in his words, roughly, that on a different day post-death of Noah Presgrove, a friend or a partygoer, someone showed Caden a photo from a video, basically a screenshot. But the way Caden described it implied that he saw the video as well, because the description by Caden was, it was just after the rollover, Noah was on the floor, had a bloodied nose, and the person recording it ran or walked up to Noah and they were laughing and joking and people were kind of having fun. That's quite a lot to describe from a still photo. How would Caden know that the person recording it walked up to Noah if it's a still photo which shows no motion, no movement? Unless it was a live photo, which is a few seconds of movement. But for Caden to say that they were laughing and joking and etc., how would you know that just based on body language with no volume? That's possible. I believe a photo, a screenshot from a video are both still. There's no motion, no movement, no volume. It's nothing. It's just a still, motionless canvas, basically. A live photo is a form of movement, but just a few seconds. But I believe that there is no volume, so it would still be muted. If Caden was shown a live photo from a video somehow, which I don't think is possible, a live photo is its own category, on phone, on mobile. Live, you got live photo, video, and then the other options as well, panoramic, time-lapse, hyperlapse, cinematic mode, depending what phone and model you have. So either Caden was shown a live photo, which was its own thing, or Caden was shown a screenshot from a video. But how Caden described it in detail implies he saw the video himself, something what we haven't seen ourselves. but Caden was shown it by someone that I guess was from the party. You'd think. Caden never gave the name away, which is interesting. So who was that person then? Was the person showing it to Caden the one that recorded it at the time and then showed it to Caden later? Or was it just a person that got a hold of it from looking on Snapchat and it's not the original? Caden did say it had a timestamp on it of 2:40 in the morning, but that timestamp could well be the time of the person's mobile phone when they decided to take the screenshot of whatever they were viewing at the time post-death of Noah Presgrove, meaning it wasn't real time. And it does conflict anyway with Caden's timeline of 2:42, waking up and seeing Noah normal with Jack and Jasmine near the beer pong table inside. No indication or sign of a rollover 2 minutes before that, so very unlikely 2:40 is the true timestamp. It's something different, a misunderstanding, and Caden may have misunderstood it. It's fair, it can happen, right? But the description by Caden, at least, of what he saw, what he was shown, implies he saw a great amount, a decent amount, detail-wise. And in terms of the mention of the person ran up to Noah whilst recording, well, that implies probably a mobile video recorder, more than likely a mobile phone, which most partygoers would have had on them at the time when present. So the side-by-side rollover event supposedly caught on camera, but not because of the cameras as in the house, the trail cameras, the doorbell camera, none of them. A mobile phone is what was used to record it, right? The term camera is very vague. It's understandable how people could jump to the idea of, oh, it must mean house cameras, surveillance ones, but no, it's mobile phones. Just like the snaps, the Snapchats, the stories, the post on and off at the party, and even Caden's raw video recordings too. Mobile phones which have cameras, and that's what documented most of the stuff at the party, if not all of it. Whether it's public or not, that's another, question. But in terms of the CCTV cameras, the true CCTV cameras, did they ever work whatsoever? The exception of supposedly when Texas boys were leaving, but did they work at any other time? Not from the looks of it. If they worked once but didn't after or before, does that mean that they're faulty? Possible. It's convenient, but it's also important if it was true, as in the timing of when it did document something. You might wonder why. Well, be on the lookout for that video if I do get round and if it is possible to cover, as in how crucial and critical it really is and how it can link on and reinforce a certain theory, which then possibly could link on to possible cause of death. So that needs to be a separate one, its own importance and focus. But beside Michael kind of misunderstanding what was said previously by others because of the vague language, and you know what? It happens too often in life. Why do humans have to be so bloody vague? That can apply to cases. It can apply to just on communities. It can apply to other areas on YouTube and other topics and themes and discussions and really anywhere with anyone. But why do people have to be so vague with their language and wording? Sometimes you need a clear answer, yes or no. Is it gonna happen? Yes or no? Is there any hope? Yes or no? What do you think of this? What do you have in mind? What do you want next? What's going to happen later? What is going on right now? What is on your mind? Etc., etc. And the response is yes, no, maybe, could be. Yeah, did it, didn't, not yet, maybe, later. Where are the rest of those words? Because I know deep down there are present in people's minds. There's a lot of humans out there that may have a lot to say, but they do not express it, nor make an effort. And that's what leads to misunderstandings. It's what can lead to underestimating certain events, underestimating the importance, not knowing the full story. And if the same humans that don't give much, but get a lot, if they have the cheek to complain afterwards and expect others to know what's up, to know what's going on, they're in no fit position to do so. You say so much, you will receive so much. You explain very little. You come across as cryptic. You come across as lackadaisical. You come across half-hearted. What do you expect back? And when they complain, not in a position to do so. Some people, though, that are simply built different, will look past that and think in other ways or be lenient. And people like that are extremely, extremely rare. But even those type of people will not be appreciated by the hands of others. Oh, very crystal clear. So, if people could be bothered to explain, if people could be bothered to use a few more words and expand, it might help other people. There's been times and moments where I do try to explain or use multiple words which say the same thing just so it's clear. And even then it might not be good enough, and there are sometimes responses and follow-ups and questions, and what do? I simply respond back. As long as the tone of voice is okay and they're not being cocky, they're not being rude, then I'll respond back normal. If people do have a bit of an attitude problem, well, they will be treated a certain way. As I said, when it comes to people with time, treat them like you're patient and nothing else. Patient in a kind, caring way. Far from it. Just simply observing and making the observations of what's wrong and what's present in front. And that is it. Because what else do they deserve? Sometimes people can make that change, make that transition, but how often do they? It's not as if they've got to go above and beyond. It's not as if it needs to be rushed or forced. No. But what you'll see with time, and what I've seen myself, too many cycles and patterns of a few words here, a few suggestions, a few changes, but ultimately it leads nowhere. And what happens eventually? People just fade into the dust. Certain points and concepts fade into the dust, and that is it. How pathetic. It really is. And when people say, you take this a little bit too serious, really? I mean, there's two ways things can go in general. Either you take things a little bit too serious, or you just take it lighthearted as a joke. And sometimes it's better to take things serious than it is to take it as a joke. Because when something is actually meant and it's important and you don't take it serious enough, that can come across as rude and disrespectful. And what good does it do for other people? If you take something too serious and it turns out to be a joke, what happens? Oh, the mood is slightly killed. Oh, a good joke was ruined. Oh, boo-hoo, never mind, move on. There's less disrespect there. Sometimes the concept of taking something or things serious, it may come across a bit boring at times, but maybe it's because the person themselves takes it important in the first place and values it, and is present and ready and listening. So what I've seen, of course, in true crime cases, communities, some people giggle about too much. And some people, when they giggle too much or piss about often, what's really going on? You know? Are they there? Are they there with it? Do they know what's really happening? Or are they just messing around? There's a time and place for certain stuff. And when it comes to a small scale event, or a claim within the case, and such as with the cameras, the vagueness of language, and then that's what it leads to, people pushing a narrative or creating one based on what they've been told or the lack of what they've been told, and they've interpreted it a certain way, and the originals did not make an attempt to clear it up or make an effort to do anything. So what do you expect, right? That small scale things can escalate, that you take it serious enough in the first place when it's something small so it doesn't expand. Like a virus, it will spread. You contain it immediately, it will be under control. But how many people control that virus when it's ticking away within or deep down? I don't think enough is done. And language and wording can be a virus that spreads, which leads to the Chinese whispers, which leads to what I've seen in previous cases, what I still see to this day. No change, no attempts, unless the catalyst shows up. And how long have I been a catalyst for in life? Far too fucking long, for certain. With that being said, when the catalyst stops, when that life support machine is pulled, it will be present, as in how things can implode on itself and it can be burnt to the ground and go wrong. I think ever since, with the presence of trying to understand what people are saying and getting at, the questions that have been raised by me and other viewers that do pick up on it, has been important as a means of not getting ahead of themselves, not getting too ahead or carried away, because if done incorrectly or too rash or rushed, it can lead to disappointment. It can lead to a feeling of being lost or confused. You believe in something or someone too much. You put all your focus, energy, and time into it, and then what happens down the line? It turns out to be a lie. You lived a lie. It meant nothing. It led to nothing. And then what are you supposed to believe in next? Trust issues can be caused from the incompetence of others and the poor, piss-poor communication as well, in true crime, in communities, and anywhere by that matter. That's why I take it serious, because I've been on the receiving end of so much. I know what to do, what not to do, and what not to become as a creator and just as a human. Yeah, as hard as it is to believe, I am a human. So we're taking that into consideration. It's understandable why Michael interpreted it the way he did or did at some point. But with the leniency of what Stevie had said a previous time, which I'm somewhat familiar with by memory, I can still understand what Michael's getting at. As for the whole... Sounds like some cats are fighting outside. Interrupting me. In terms of what's been said about the laptop, there's a bit hit and miss. Covered it to some extent. How important is it? I guess it depends. What does it lead to? It doesn't seem like it's led to much at this moment. Will there be any change about it? Depends how documented it is, what it's led to, and so on. But it won't just be Michael that's misinterpreted some language or vague wording. It can also apply to, I guess, Alicia with what's previously been said. I did do an analysis of it yesterday, but I can always refer back to it now in correlation and connection with the party house itself, the cameras, what was there or what isn't, depending on what you can visually see. Because I wasn't successful, I'll be honest with you, but maybe you can be. Let's transition. You'll be familiar with this as we looked at it yesterday, but it's important to acknowledge it. Alicia had said, Stevie Howard, you said the cameras weren't working, but here it said they were. Caden said there was a doorbell camera there. You can have as many cameras till the cows come home, but the reality is, were the cameras working, yes or no? That's what ultimately matters. If you can prove from your cameras that a kid was taken home safely, then you should also see other things, right? Only if that camera is on site of the party house property. And from what Brooke Bounce Carter was getting at, was more so a camera which was at or near Terrell and not the party house, because Brooke says Carter only took one kid home because she snuck out of her home and she needed a ride home, lived 1 mile away. 1 mile north or south, where's the closest civilization? 1 mile would be south, which is kind of like 1 mile or a bit over to Terrell. So that's the closest place, that's the closest home, and that's where likely that girl was from. So Carter drove the girl back to Terrell, and Terrell has cameras present, maybe other properties, businesses, the mini-mart of all places. So that's what they mean by it catching Carter on camera and proving that's where she was at that time and what she was doing, dropping someone off. That was all, not that deep. But it wasn't made that clear because what I said wasn't worded by Brooke. It was a bit more vague. So obviously Tria questioned it as in, so there are cameras? Oh, well, if there are cameras, I've seen lots of others asking about it. And if the cameras are on the property or on the roads, I'm assuming it's been turned over to authorities. And Brooke's response is, yes, it has. That could mean one of two things. I interpreted it one way. I think Brenda interpreted it the other way, which I do understand now. Hopefully, I'm on the same wavelength. We'll get to that in a second. But to say, yes, it has, and Tria has asked more than one question, and it requires different forms of answering and different forms of wording and language and sentence structuring, it's kind of hard to tell what Brooke is answering. You'd think that the question of, has the footage been turned over to authorities? And Brooke says, yes, it has, but that answers the question there. But can you apply that same answer to the question of, are there cameras on the property or on the road? And Brooke says, yes, it has. That doesn't link, does it? Unless the question was simply put as in, are there cameras? Does the property, does the house have surveillance cameras? And Brooke's response would be, yes, it has. As in, yes, it has cameras. So it can either mean Brooke meant, yes, it has been turned into authorities, as in footage from maybe the mini-mart, as an example. Or Brooke could be saying, yes, it has cameras on the property. It's pretty vague. Maybe Brooke could be saying yes to both questions. And if so, how instrumental is it? Well, I interpret it still that Brooke is saying that yes, that there is cameras. Well, actually, no, here's a hybrid. We always got to look at holistically and combine it. A hybrid way of looking at this response could be Brooke says, yes, the house has cameras, but also, yes, the footage has been handed in to authorities. But the footage that has been handed in is the footage from cameras in the town of Terrell. But the house that has cameras weren't working. You see? The way Alicia has interpreted it, more roughly, was simply put as in she thought that Brooke basically said, yes, the house has cameras, and it confirmed seeing her taking Carter taking the girl back to where she needs to be, as in Terrell. Well, the cameras on the property would only see so much, but if the cameras caught Carter leaving with the party goer, anything like that would imply that the cameras were working on the property, so they should have caught other things, and that's what Alicia is putting across as a point. But if you look back to my hybrid way of looking at it, you can have cameras on the property, but the footage that was handed in, maybe from cameras not on property, but was in Terrell to prove where she was and why she went down there. But the actual cameras on the property just weren't working, so you couldn't really do much with them. So, a bit more of a full perspective now. Beside that, this is the party house, daytime, and I believe this may have been from, it would have been from a news article. Cropped it down with Noah off, just so we could focus more in on the house itself. Don't know when this was actually taken, but I guess it was permission to take the photo. As to who took it, not sure. Police, media. The reason why I just wanted to show you it is just to see if there are cameras visible. Okay, cameras may have been on site at the property in some areas, but how noticeable are they, and how many cameras are present too? Like on the sides, the back, the front. There might be a Ring doorbell camera, but are there any cameras elsewhere? You know, the positioning of them. Trail cameras too, I don't see them. But then again, when it came to Bub Wilcoxon's place and we did it on Street View, whilst yes, it was grainy up to a point when you got close, further back, I just couldn't see any cameras. Does that mean I'm blind? Not exactly. It just comes down to the directions and what you're given. And if you're not given a hint as to where they could be located, you might not be able to see them. And depending on if vegetation covers it, that's another factor. But zooming in, as for whose pickup truck vehicle, I don't know if it's a Ford F-150 or not, but and maybe it's not relevant to the case party, but as for whose vehicle that is, if anyone knows, can you see any cameras? It might be a big ask. It might not be possible. I mean, you got that overhanging roof, the patio area, so there's not any cameras underneath the roofing. You may not see it from this angle, but the cameras might be able to see you. And I've only got certain angles and perspectives. As for any cameras inside of the house, I'm not too certain of. In terms of the porchway, the door is back there behind the vehicle, which goes up the steps, and there is a Ring doorbell camera supposedly, which Jasmine Milan covered with her head, so you couldn't see it at the time of 3:41. But I said you can have as many cameras as you want, but if they're not working, then they're pretty much useless. Though, with what's been said on the sideline, the possibilities of one or two may have worked at a certain point. Is that a level of convenience? Is it dodgy? If any of it is true, or it was true but people were trying to hide it or to avoid sharing it because it was incriminating or it made things look worse or mysterious, added more questions than what was needed, then why would they say it in the first place? But then again, you know, everybody watching, it might be just a slip of the tongue, it might be a mistake, but what about Sarah Long that said, when I arrived at the scene to wake up Caden and the guys? The scene, as in the party house, why would it be described as a scene, or the scene, when Noah supposedly didn't die there? It was the highway, and that's what's considered the scene, the crime scene, the incident scene, etc. The scene in which it's deemed as important and needs to be cornered off, sealed and investigated. If Sarah was referring to the party house as the scene, what does that mean? What went on there then? I said it might just be a mistake, and I know people in the background will say don't be holding on to people's words too much because it might not actually be meant. I get that. And I do in other ways. Maybe I can do an analysis briefly a bit later. But still, sometimes you do have to hold on. What, with hope? Or more so with skepticism? Just in case. Maybe if you get that balance and you don't go too all in, it can be managed. But you let me know if you see any cameras whatsoever. I don't see any like familiar shapes or things that I would come across. In certain spots, there might be a light, a sensor light, which we've seen in the nighttime footage to some extent. This particular one, more in recent time, passing down the highway, heading south. It shows the side and back profile of the party house, if you haven't seen it already. A bit too blurry to be able to determine whether there's cameras or not. I can see one little white dot in that corner, which I don't know if you can see, which is just kind of on the side of the house, kind of under the front patio overhanging roof. But that white little dot could be anything. It could also be a light, because I'm sure that in the corner there was a light that was glowing or illuminated from either party footage or when that stranger was driving on down the property in 2024. One or the other. So you've got to take that into consideration. Would there be any cameras whatsoever around the back? Cameras for what reason? Surveillance, personal security, safety and whatnot. For those that are on site, for outsiders, it's understandable. And in rural areas, sometimes you need it more because you might not have a neighbourhood watch. You might not have the same resources close by. you can be a bit more vulnerable. You can stick out more if you're in a more isolated place. You might be targeted better sometimes. But you let me know if you notice anything. I've done a bit of an analysis already in the past. I mean, look at the mini-mart, cameras there, and I couldn't see them myself too clearly. But then again, I might have suggested there was one around the back or just on the other side of the roof. Is it a big deal? Well, it's just trying to understand the angles and the positioning of the cameras, because if the cameras are at the front and they're facing towards, like, if they're facing east-west, that would be very important, because then it would show a good perspective of Noah walking away, and if anything entailed after that, as in a verbal fight between Jack Avery versus Noah, as it's been mentioned in the wrongful death lawsuit. I'd like to know that where did the family or the attorneys to the family get a hold of that information or knowledge or the suggestion of that there was a verbal fight between Avery, Jack versus Noah Presgrove. No time was ever given, but where did that come from? Because I've never heard of it beforehand, not with those circumstances and names, more than two people as well. So something like that, if it happened when Noah was walking away, going outside to walk off, and was followed to a certain point, and arguments followed as well. I mean, if there's cameras present in the right angles, facing the right way, it could show and prove it happened, and hence why it influenced what the family say. But at the time of when the wrongful death lawsuit was filed, it was before the subpoena was granted. So the family technically wouldn't have that knowledge of or material of the cameras, I guess, if it did show anything of interest or to some extent. Even if the cameras were working but limited range and vision, would it crack the case completely? No. If cameras were at the spot of where Noah Presgrove was found dead, that could crack or solve the case, because then you would determine whether he died at that spot or if he was dumped at that spot. And if he was dumped, well, then you got a big new lead to follow up on, correct? But if Noah truly did walk away to cool off and went east and faded into the darkness, and then something happened at that point when out of line of sight of the camera, well, then the camera can't really say much more. But it could at least give a time. It could at least reinforce the true time of when Noah walked away. And then it could at least show whether anyone followed after him. And if they did, well, then they could be a person of interest. So it goes so far in questioning, it may not truly solve the case. The only point would be if the cameras had audio recordings, as in if it picked up any sounds, screams, voices, familiarities like that. But if the cameras weren't working, they weren't working. But it's that what if with some of the inconsistencies along the way. So it's understandable to be sceptical. You don't want to hold on to people's words too much, but at the same time, sometimes you need to, just in case. This particular clip is actually from, I think, either Sarah Long or Stevie Howard, that was just basically saying round the back was either a water meter or a water box, and it was not a hazmat suit, and that was made very clear, of course. But this is just like another angle. So at night time, you see where the lights emitted from. On the left hand side, beside that basketball hoop net, on the left you got that big lamp post which illuminates the area quite bright. And then on the right hand side, the porchway door, you got a nice big bright light. And I think on the far end side on the right, under the patio, I think there is a light in the corner, which could be what I was pointing to earlier, possibly, unless it was a reflection from something else. But the angling of it was kind of interesting. But then again, when it came to this, or more so on the further right end, over that way on the right hand side, when under the patio area roof, when it showed that footage of, I think, Carter Combs running into that cardboard or wood, before she charged, when she was covering some distance on ground, ready to charge, and the camera panned around, facing west, the west field, in the sky or slightly higher up and not on the ground. There was like a bright light, and I don't know what that was, a lens reflection, some kind of reflection, but what was it reflecting off? I don't quite know. It might align with where the light was on the corner of the party house, the roofing, or just under the roofing overhang, but where's the light being casted, the beam, and what's it reflecting on or shimmering on? I couldn't quite understand that. I don't know if anyone remembers. I don't know if we'll need to do a separate video on it. You got the overhead power lines, unless the metal bit or the higher up part on the overhead power lines, it was shimmering or so because the light was casting on it and it made it bright and shiny. So maybe that's all it was, but you know, got to take into consideration. This one here, I couldn't see any cameras at that time, but in terms of what was mentioned here, and this was in 2024, in case you're wondering, when it came to Logan Jernigan, unaware at the time, but then find out later, as in there was footage of someone going on down to the property just to record what it looked like on ground level. Sarah Long said, "This makes me sick for you girls, but don't worry, we've got the video footage from the cameras. So the vehicle description and tag number are now in the hands of the police. So rest assured, this won't happen again. And I'll have to have my sister post a video debunking the hazmat suit," which was basically this one, Stevie recording it herself. But in terms of acting fast, we've got the footage. And Sarah says that, we've got the footage. Sarah doesn't even live there. Okay, Sarah is the sister to Stevie, but the fact that they've got the video footage and they don't even live there, could that whole footage and the cloud storage link back to what Michael was referring to here? That at the house, kind of ground zero, where the cameras are, if they were working, if they weren't working, depending on the timing, 2023, the most important. 2024 onwards, new cameras replacing the old ones, and ultimately why, we'll get to that shortly. But you can see, maybe, would you say that there's a difference in attitude when taking action of when something bad's happened? You might ask, why do I question that and what am I exactly referring to? Well, the situation with Noah Presgrove, it mainly impacted Noah and really only impacted Noah as to what happened to him. Other people impacted by it, by the sad news and hearing of it, and with it being close, it affects you emotionally and causes all kinds of issues. Of course, if you're close and you know someone, and even if you didn't know someone, a tragedy like that, and the closeness, and it being a reminder from there on then, it can mess with your mind, of course, whether you're responsible or not, whether you feel guilty or not. It can play on your mind, of course. But it was Noah that lost his life. It was Noah on the receiving end of something. Before the case opened, Noah was the only victim. And in terms of whether cameras were or weren't working, were people proactive enough to get a hold of, to check, to try, and if there was anything, to hand in appropriately? Maybe, maybe not. The difference, though, with the case investigation open, beginning onwards, more victims, as in on the receiving end of potential harassment, acts of vigilantism, supposedly property being damaged, and the likes of Logan Jernigan, Carter Combs and Avery being on the receiving end of those threats and behaviour. They won't be the only ones, and it doesn't just apply to partygoers, it can apply to members of the general public that have been attacked by other members of the general public, just like myself, right? More than one victim when the case opened up because there was more people brought into it and more of a focus, right? What I'm getting at is, the moment there was more than one victim, linking in with the cameras, linking with the proactivity. When it came to Logan being in danger by the hands of a stranger, possibly, driving on down, unknown to them at the time, Logan, Avery, and Carter all being present in that house at the time, unaware, but then later finding out that they were being, I guess in their opinion, stalked, fearing for their life, or just simply feeling creeped out by it. And it was convenient timing that there were cameras, new cameras, and working functional cameras. Unfortunately, they weren't around at the time when Noah was at that party. So what ultimately influenced adding new cameras? Was it because of justice for Noah? Was it because of Noah's death? I don't think so. From how it's come about in the community, the reason why cameras were installed, new ones, and replacing the old ones was because Logan, Carter and Avery were receiving threats, being harassed and in some form of danger, so they needed to protect themselves, and new cameras were set up. But because Sarah Long, who doesn't live there, was the one to say, you know what, we've got the footage, we have the footage. And it can be interpreted as in we, as in I, the sister to your mother, Stevie Howard, we have the footage. We don't live at that party house. Maybe this is just based on interpretation. Maybe we didn't go on down to the party house to get the footage either, because we could access it in other ways, that we can monitor the CCTV cameras and footage from afar. If that's to do with the cloud storage and what Michael was getting at, then okay, there's a bit of a link going on. But in terms of the proactivity, getting the footage, we already have it. We've handed it into police. We'll see what happens next. Whether anything happened or not, whether there was justice or not or needed, action was taken quick in the name of Logan, Carter and Avery, victims supposedly to harassment, victims to supposedly stalking, right? And their family, their friends of friends, connections, looked out for one another as what a family should do, and that is a positive, it's good. Was that same level of proactivity present with Noah Presgrove though, when it came to cameras? And you could say, maybe not, because the cameras weren't working, so what else could you do about it? But there's still that what if they were working, would there have been proactivity? Would action have been taken? And I know some could snap and say, of course, we care. It's Noah at the end of the day. Well, then what the hell happened to some of those personal items of Noah, which was supposedly gathered up, rounded up, placed somewhere, but ultimately never saw the eyes of the victim's family onwards, neither the golf clubs and the bag. Even if it's an irrelevant piece of material and it's not evidence and it's not linked to the death or the cause of death, it's still an item or items that have gone missing. And why should they go missing? Why? If you care in life about someone or something or items, you will take care of them. You'll take into consideration how you handle it, how you approach it, what you do with it, and so on, your attitude, how you value it. Do you take great care? Do you take your time? Do you rush it? Do you bundle it? Do you throw it? Do you chuck it about? Or do you handle it gently and slowly and then give or return to the rightful owner because it's important to you and it's important to them and you see it like that? Would that be the same attitude with the cameras if possible, right? And like when I said back to Sarah Long, referring to the house as going to the scene, it would only be the scene if something bad happened there, if something happened to Noah Presgrove, and if that's true, well then being found at the highway would imply foul play. It's not really been cleared up since, but I think opposition would just say it's probably wrong wording, it's simply a mistake, other people do it, other people mess up. Don't look too deep into it. Don't go too far. It's not that deep. It's a simple mistake. We're humans. But don't worry. If I do focus in on what Sarah Long says as a slip of the tongue or I'm suspicious about it, there's no harm in being that way, as long as I do the same with other people, which I clearly do. So it's balanced regardless. And I know people say, don't take people's words or lines or sentences completely. What they may say, they may not always mean. Maybe more so with words rather than actions, because actions speak louder than words at times. I get that to an extent. A person can say something, a person can use certain words to you. It might sound good, it might sound great, it might sound promising and hopeful. But what happens next? Nothing. What happens later? Nothing. So what was the point, right? It can lead to disappointment. It can lead to being let down. It can lead to feeling half empty, as in so much was given. You're fed a carrot on a stick, and where is it leading to? Nowhere, or it just ends abruptly. So the reference of calling it a scene and what else? Not much else said. Look at the words, question and be skeptical. You don't have to go too deep into it. You don't have to get too lost in thought, but just consider the possibilities. And that's like what I've kind of done. You can only go so far anyway. There's limited material. But at times, people can say a lot or can say stuff that's promising or show that care, show that energy, show that want, show that hunger, but it leads to silence. Or it goes backwards, back to square one, and you think, what was the point? Only say things if you're sure. It doesn't have to be facts, it can be opinions, feelings, and thoughts, but there's some situations and circumstances where if you're going to say something, it could impact the other person or people. So choose your words wisely and make sure what you say you bloody well mean. Because I've come across many humans that don't say what they mean, and what they mean, they don't say. And I do find out eventually, and I'm often disappointed. Ooh, how naughty. Ooh, how tense. Does it look like I get any enjoyment from that shit from humans? Not at all. I am sick to death of it. And that is why, besides having patience of an absolute fucking God, and that's not being cocky, that's just a fact. It's been proven with time, and there are witnesses to back that up. Besides patience levels, just simply in terms of when it seems like it's BS or it's, oh, here we go again, that type of thing, I pick up on it a bit quicker now, and so I should, through adapting. Shouldn't be that way, but it's happened. With the other discussions and conversations, that could also be influenced by misunderstandings and language and wording, and it sounds boring going on about it over and over again, but when you look back at the mess, you look back at maybe narratives and false things being spread, it's not always done intentionally. People can get ahead of themselves and people can misunderstand something, but it's not always their own fault. It can be 50-50 at times, as in the original person talking about it should have made it clearer. And I think sometimes there might be an entitlement to think that, well, what I say vaguely or cryptically, people will know and they should know, and I expect them to. If you're communicating with people you're familiar with and you have your own slang, code word and all that, fine. If you're doing it privately in a chat, in a private conversation, that's understandable. Outsiders shouldn't be expected or would really know what's being said or going on or who's being talked about. But if you're talking like how you would, well, you don't have to talk how you would in private to how you would just generally. But instead of just saying he or she or they, what does that actually refer to? Maybe there's exceptions where people can't say the names and can't give certain details because they're trying to protect the privacy of someone. But if that could have been used as a disclaimer, then it would come across clearer and then people wouldn't misinterpret it and claim, oh, this has been done to censor things. This person's leaving breadcrumbs in a manipulative, dark way, so they're a bad person, and people jump the gun and go so far. Where there's more emotionally charged people in a case, you got to be careful with your language and wording. Not because you don't want to offend people, but just because you don't want to escalate the situation or add too much noise or delays in the case. Try and keep it as controlled as possible and naturally. Doesn't often happen. It's unfortunate. So what have we really learned from this video today? As in that, yeah, there are cameras, surveillance on site of the property, the party house, but supposedly not working. There might be the exception of one thing, if I can find a screenshot, if ever. In the meantime, as for cameras being replaced at a later point, that was for certain reasons, not somewhat linked to the Noah Presgrove case, but the ones on the receiving end of it wasn't Noah, but it was the party host later, the girls that were exposed to trouble, danger, darkness. Efforts of security and cameras were implemented. Were any factors of security surveillance added in because of influence of Noah's death? I don't know too much about that. If you had picked up on anything yourself or noticed any cameras through some of the limited photos what we looked at today, thoughts, theories, questions and answers, just leave it all down below under the video. Can get back to that later and respond if need be. And then we'll see where we are then for the next video or the next theme and topic. My name is WarLike Wrath. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you want to share the button, hit the thumbs up, and I'll appreciate that. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. Good night for now.